I'm very fortunate in some of the things I've been able to do. I mean, when the big Matisse exhibition was at the Museum of Modern Art, there were a couple of us who used to go every Wednesday morning when it was closed to the public and talk our way through it. And Bill Agee and I one day managed to get, in 3.5 hours, we got from 1905 to 1907. It was a real education. It was wonderful. And one Wednesday morning, they also let special guests in, as well as scholars. There was Ken Noland, who's a friend, was a friend, as you can tell from the various pieces, very generous friend. And I went around the Matisse show with Ken. And that was extraordinary because his way of looking at the paintings was totally different from my approach. Remember he said, looking at something, he said, that's keyed off of green. Says, you don't usually get painting keyed off of green. I mean, he was looking at the color structure of the painting at almost the expense of everything else. So that was very exciting. I've spent a lot of time with Greenberg in the studio, which was absolutely Greenberg at his best. That's where he was pure. That's where his responses were, well, except for the last few years, but he would look away until something was brought out, so that he would then look at it without having seen it be put up. And his responses were direct. And in fact, sometimes there would be conversations about, well, isn't that, that painting is so influenced by Olitsky. It doesn't matter, it's a good painting. He was dealing with what was in front of him. He was a very complicated, I think very unhappy, often extraordinarily unpleasant man who had a lot of qualities that were not admirable in terms of seeing how far he could push you before you rebelled. But I learned a lot from his writing. I feel very fortunate to have seen him in the studio. As I say, that's where he really was remarkable. He certainly, is his account of modernism the only account? No. There's a lot going on that he wasn't interested in. A lot of what he was interested in, I am still very interested in. But it doesn't mean that it's the all-purpose, all-encompassing answer. Nevertheless, it's wonderful writing and often enormously perceptive. I miss Helen Frankenthaler terribly. She was a really close friend. Spent a lot of time together. And she could be incredibly rigorous about art, and we could, giggle like teenagers too. Talk about clothes. One friend of ours said, Helen, you're a lot of trouble, but you're worth it. She was very demanding, but also very demanding of herself. She didn't ask anything from anybody that she didn't ask of herself. And if you were on her territory, she was the most gracious, wonderful hostess. I mean, she would anticipate needs you didn't know you had. And fun, very fun. Tony Caro's like family. Tony Caro and his wife Sheila Gerling, who's a wonderful painter, not nearly well enough known here, although she has a very substantial reputation in Europe. They're extraordinary people, generous, smart. And Tony's driven. I mean, I periodically get calls, when are you coming? You've got a studio full of new sculpture. Well, yes, it's sort of you spend the day working. He loves people's responses. I know Michael Fried spends a lot of time with him in the studio as well, whenever he's there. And of course, Michael was the first person to write about Tony's work. He's not interested in the pieces that are going well. He's interested in the pieces that he's having, I wouldn't say trouble with, but that are in some other stage. And he wants the response. And he's not interested in theory. He wants, think that should be cut off. Oh, Pat, cut it off. See what it looks like. He's involved with a big project for the Park Avenue medians. There are 3 blocks of Park Avenue between 59th and 62nd Street where there's been a history of placing sculptures on the ends of the blocks. Well, Tony has conceived of 3 enormous sculptures that will embrace the entire median, 18 feet high, so they'll embrace the trees as well. So you have one kind of reading as you go along as a pedestrian or in a car. As you cross the street, there are these kind of gate-like framing that you see through them. They're going to be astonishing. Well, he only likes to work full size. I mean, he's never made models, but for this he had to at least get the concept as a model, and then he built quarter-scale steel pieces that were a way of working out the larger details and also the engineering where the flanges are, because that's part of the drawing. The flanges and bolts and where things attach. I was in London in the spring, and the quarter-scale big steel pieces were pulled out into the courtyard where his studio is, photographed, looked at, talked about. I could just see the wheels turning. He was not interested in them as quarter scale anything. He was interested in what they were and how they could be made into sculpture. I was just there for the Stella show and spent a wonderful day with Tony in the studio, and all the engineering drawings have been done, so they can be built, and then he'll obviously tinker with them when they're full size. But he is making those quarter scale steel pieces into real sculptures. And he's having a wonderful time.